Of course, the introduction says that I'm both an architect and computer engineer, and my topic is not going to be about machine learning. Is going to be about how space and technology can have fun with their users, especially in the city, and how we can use analytical and methodological advances and computational logic, let's say, in order to do so. So in a way, some people until now showed how they want to understand the brain. I'm going to be messing with the brain a bit. So that's my fun. And that's why, as an architect, I started working with computational spatial analysis. So before I start, a shameless plug, some people may know me from DepthMapX, which is the most widely used spatial analysis tool in our community, and has a wide set of well-established, let's say, methods and models for analyzing both urban and building scale. My talk is not going to be about this, or not focused at least. So yeah, it's an open source project. You can go and download it for free and run it in any operating system. So I personally always had a passion for space on the one hand, and kind of visual perception and illusions on the other. And there's plenty of kind of ideas and readings that can go back to at least the ancient Greeks with Eidolon. I'm Greek as well. But you don't have to go that far back. I mean, the world around us is full of visual trickeries. And in most cases, we don't have to try hard in order to produce visual misinformation for the human brain, as other experts probably will present later. And artists use this in order to produce kind of breathtaking visual augmentations, and in a way change the way that we perceive and move through space. So, for example, with this kind of or drawing, let's say, some of us might feel, at least for a millisecond, our brain until it recalculates, let's say, the path, might feel a bit daunting or apprehended, even though this is a perfectly kind of flat image. And grand designs like this one, where this skewed, extra skewed perspective emphasizes even more the depth of this this high ceiling and how it's produced in a way. But my kind of idea was always closer to digital illusions, and more specifically, digitally augmenting physical spaces, real spaces, because I really liked on the one side the kind of the classical architecture and the computing, let's say, on the other. Always something physical, something virtual. And nowadays, ambient technology and kind of projected augmentations allow both artists and architects to have like an infinite possibilities of weird sort of scenarios, let's say. So in order to explore, kind of visual augmentations and visual illusions, I have developed and collaborated in a number of kind of interactive installations and research experiments around the world. And my projects kind of all included kind of projected augmentations, projected reality, augmented reality in a way, physical computing, and always fused in a way that challenged the public's, or let's say participants' understanding of the space around them. And in this example is like a kind of a bending wall installation where it was part of a bar, let's say, lounge area, where the physical boundaries were pushed back and stressed beyond the kind of the actual limits of the room, because there were participants there that didn't sign any waivers, so I cannot show you kind of the actual setup with the people in there. I personally kind of like to challenge this kind of the visual perception and understanding of the boundaries, in specifically in such a way that conflicts with the understanding of the spatial morphology you had for that particular setting before, let's say, the installation. So everyone has a mental kind of image in their brain about the space, particular space. So So while kind of designing and building experiences like this, I started working more closely and also expanding, let's say, a number of classic spatial cognition and perception theories. And in a fundamental level, we start with ideas as, the structure and configuration of space affects people navigation and movement. And we've got also Gibson psychological theory, where people perceive space through kind of their senses and act accordingly. And so everything around us has some sort of affordances. And, Benedict, where space is perceived as a collection of visible surfaces that are not obstructed by other physical boundaries. But in my case, I like this consciously deceiving city. So the boundaries, the space and the boundaries are also a bit of a fluid concept in a way. So this is kind of a classic space syntax slide that we use when teaching, when we want to emphasize that people tend to move towards kind of greater openings and sometimes, the longest perceived lines of sight. So while the concept of your local visual potential kind of is easier, at least easier to grasp, as you can start looking around you. When you try to create more complex spatial designs and experiences, even without including high-tech illusions, I mainly use computational kind of tools and computational methods that are based on building graphs of highly intervisible locations in space in order to sort of, let's say, calculate the potential of certain phenomena. And this is an example that you can run in depth map, so you can go and test it. And this is what we traditionally call visibility graph analysis. And in a complex built environment around us, methodologies like this not only help me kind of understand, but also exploit the visual and movement potential of the designs. And here we've got some prototypes of, let's say, simulations of movement potentials that are, in this case, the agents, let's say, had also non-physical visual information there as well as an influence. And that's what we commonly refer to as an agent-based modeling in our field. And while this particular output is not part of what you can do in DepthMap, you can run other simulations and agent-based models there in order to test your designs. So in order to understand how this kind of visual augmentations and depth-generating illusions affect people in a more systematic way, let's say, I start running experiments with digital augmentations and kind of hybrid spatial configurations and try to understand how people move through this kind of spaces. And this is kind of an example with some sort of, let's say, fake opening and fake rooms projected into the walls. So I was really fascinated that even simple visual trickeries started kind of generating spatial/visual, let's say, asymmetries and, let's say, topological overlaps. So different topological overlaps in your brain probably. I haven't done any fMRI or something like this, but from the findings, I think that they produce some sort of affordances that consciously or unconsciously, who knows better, the brain uses this to navigate through space, or at least I can use it to mess with your navigation. So what we observed was like people moving towards this kind of new visual illusions and the spaces, and the stats and the statistics were very good in our favor. So I started developing like a new, let's say, theoretical framework for analyzing these hybrid spatial environments. And think of it as, this is not my thing, as an artistic interpretation, think of it as an exercise trying to decode the influence field, let's say, around you, like this one. This is a crazy, non-linear, let's say, artistic interpretation, but maybe at some point we will be able to even kind of analyze a simulation kind of situations like this. But down to earth now, coming from the illusion to the computational analysis, a journey like this, so playing with overlapping, let's say, hybrid typologies, helped me see the visual and the spatial morphology with a different mindset. And after kind of an extensive trial and error, in a way, I started formalizing a framework called Augmented Visibility Graph Analysis, where the introduction you can sort of read in that publication, in order to help me sort of formally analyze things. And in this way, I wanted to disconnect an idea that existed in the community that, there's the link between, exactly, let's say, one-on-one link between vision, a subliminal potential to move somewhere, and also, let's say, the actual access to that area that you want to move, because some of the parts might not be there, if they're virtual or they're hybrid. Cool, yeah. You're running a bit faster than me, definitely. So to be honest, though, going back and doing the full circle, I'm still looking for kind of new architectural adventures, and I have the pleasure to work closely with other experts in the field of, let's say, more traditional architectural augmentations, like Sofia Vsara, who for years, I think, she tries to decode kind of potential morphological meanings from a number of kind of exceptional architectural exams, like the Miss Pavilion, where some may say, like, plain and simple traditional reflections and materials produce a more natural augmentation towards the other side of the digital thing. So just to finish with a couple of ideas open for discussion, I'm not going to propose something crazy at the moment, because it's part of also my kind of future plans. First of all, as an architect, from a point of view of an architect, we've got a number of exams that cleverly use, let's say, traditional mirrors and other trickery. But how far we can go with it now that we can kind of infuse topological and morphological, let's say, craziness into our cities with technology. And the second point is, like, with this kind of art of visual deception, we can go the other way, the dark side. And I think in the near future, a combination of a new built environment technology and the advances in computational analysis might transform the city even more, if we forget the Piccadilly big Coca-Cola advert, into more of a kind of a more crazy, let's say, Blade Runner city, where the city is consciously spamming us in a way and try to mess with, dominates our experience of the city around us. And for me, final thing is that it's all down to understanding, even with the computational tools we've got now, the threshold between what we subliminally can process and what overflows our attention. And for me, of course, I'm talking about the spatial and visual kind of illusions, like the digital aspect of this. And that's it.